This is In the Trenches, Broadcast 20.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Dave Ursillo, a multi-published author and entrepreneur who helps creative self-starters live their leadership through artistry. Dave's written 8 books, is the leader of the Literati Writers, a small private community of writers, and has done numerous speaking engagements around the country on the topic of communication and leadership. Today's broadcast is going to be a bit different because I brought Dave on the show specifically to talk about the idea of courage in writing, what it takes, can it be cultivated, etc. So Dave, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to speak with you.
Absolutely. So, before we get into the meat of today's discussion, which will be on the topic of courage in writing, I want to get to know a little bit more about you and how you got started in writing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic question. So, my story as a writer actually begins officially around September 11th, 2001. I was 15 years old when 9/11 happened. Of course, a major world event, especially for us in America, us in the West, really had a significant political impact throughout our world. And, obviously we're still feeling the effects of it today throughout global conflicts and economic repercussions, clashes of cultures and clashes of civilization and so on. But for me, just being a 15-year-old kid in high school at the time, I was really coming of age, Tom, and into my own kind of like political consciousness of really starting to understand the world beyond the walls of my, Rhode Island high school here in New England. And when September 11th happened, it really kind of accelerated this pressing need that I felt to step into my own understanding of what it means to be a leader and to kind of shape my career path as I was exploring it in high school and throughout college and beyond, to see how I couldn't make a difference in the world in a way that was helpful and positive and constructive in a world that apparently needed it, especially in light of 9/11. And I actually started writing in light of 9/11 on political issues, which is funny because it's a far cry from anything I write about now. But with the political atmosphere being what it was after September 11th, and in the tumultuous period that we lived through in the following years, I really began to understand beyond the scope of politics or war or terrorism that writing possessed this really invitational power by its nature. And by that I mean you can really, as a writer, invite somebody with such different ideas, viewpoints, opinions, and beliefs to engage your writing and entertain an opinion that they might completely disagree with, but through the power of writing, because they are choosing to engage it by their own personal will and without being forced or, debated or otherwise challenged. So writing possessed this invitational power that I found to be really, really powerful and really constructive. And throughout the years that followed, as I got away from politics and have kind of tread this new path in the last 4 years of being a creative entrepreneur, I've really tried to teach fellow writers and creatives and entrepreneurs, to whatever degree you may or may not be a writer, to use the power of writing in a way that I believe is really conducive to constructive thought, dialogue, and ultimately change that's change that will last, that's not forced upon somebody but chosen by their own will.
Yeah, that's a pretty fascinating background too. I'm kind of curious about that. So you went into politics and you got out. What exactly was that inspiration then to leave politics and then to get into the writing full time? Was it just that? Is it because you saw the power in writing, or was there were there any other reasons to it?
It's a great question, Tom. Well, the main reasons were I couldn't stand the working environment basically at all. The world of politics today is obviously very polarizing and divisive, especially in American politics, and there's not a lot of happy-go-lucky times in the political system today. It's all hellish, to be honest with you. For me, I was working for a politician 4 years ago who was running for governor, and I was working in the state of Rhode Island. So I had this duality of I was working for a politician, but I was also a member of the state government. So on the one hand, the state job is kind of like a really cherished thing because it's conceivably a very safe job. On the other hand, the political role was one of complete tumult. It was like, you might have a job in a year and a half if he gets elected. You might not have a job in a year and a half if he doesn't get elected. But beyond that parallel of either I could take total comfort and be in a job for 20 years and then retire with like full pay and benefits, or I might be without a job in a year and a half. I just really didn't like that the atmosphere of the political world, much like the corporate world, often dictates that you do not possess a voice, you do not possess any power to influence change or help people if you don't pay your dues, if you don't make more money, if you don't get the job titles. Basically, I was really disenfranchised by what is very practical and understandable, that you need to work your way up through a system in order to start affecting change or helping people. Maybe it's a product of me being a part of Generation Y. Some call our generation entitled and whatever. It's not that I wanted to skip to the end where I wanted to just be like a looked-to leader in society. I just believe that I could do something with my life right now that would help people. And writing is what I fell back on. So I ended up quitting my job, and I really had no idea what I was doing for a good couple of years. But I started a blog under my name. I started writing. I started to really kind of cultivate my own philosophy and outlook in life and kind of rebuild my own identity in a way that wasn't me who was this career path or this career choice, but me and what I believed as a human being. And that's how I built a foundation for myself as a writer, and built an identity for myself as a writer. And then ultimately I would, try a million different ideas, as most entrepreneurs do. 999, well, let's see, I said a million, so 999,000 of them didn't work out. And occasionally one idea does, and that's just enough to start helping people and really begin to cut your teeth in a way that's tough but very rewarding and fulfilling, because you know that you're actually helping people along the way.
Yeah. So how has that journey been for you? And I think this will be a good segue into the idea of courage in writing, but how has that journey been for you? Because I think that journey, making that choice, takes courage. And, honestly, I think it takes a lot of courage. So tell us about that journey itself, how it's been for you.
Yeah, Tom, it's amazing. The journey has been amazing. It's been nothing I ever could have predicted, nothing I could have foreseen. A lot of high highs, a lot of low lows. When I quit my job 4.5 years ago now, I was actually depressed. And it took me probably a good 4 to 6 months to dig myself out of that depression just by getting my feet back under me. And there's never been as difficult a time, I wouldn't say. It's all kind of been progressive with a lot of ups and downs, but the journey has been an amazing one, and that's something that that's why I do what I do. Tom, it's the reason why I left the working atmosphere I was in, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today as a writer and a creative entrepreneur. And actually the mainstay of my business in the last year, to take a quick detour, is I founded and I operate this premium membership online writers group. This is kind of like an online writing community called the Literati Writers. And I've had the honor and pleasure of working with over 70 writers and creatives from all over the world over the last 12 or 13 months. And really what I'm teaching them is what I have been learning and living in the last few years, which is that the journey in life is the greatest reward. And so the creative journey ought to be treated just the same. I believe the same about business. Being a creative entrepreneur, there's a lot of, I'm not very business minded, but I'm learning how to be. And there's a lot of ups and downs with it, but really the goal is to align work and play and, relationships and just experiences in life through travel, through meeting people and helping people, serving people, or, taking on clients and customers and serving their needs and helping them fix their problems. It's not to blur the line so that they all become one amorphous blob. It's so that they all each are about experiencing the journey in a rewarding way. So for me, I really want to experience work and play and people and just my everyday life in a way that's deeply rewarding. And how that is rewarding for me is through feeling creative, a lot of depth and nuance. I want to have like deep, meaningful conversations like the one we're having now about, what matters in life and how to get there. So that for me has been the overriding theme. And because that is the overriding theme, that's the deeply rooted, quote unquote, why, the why that drives me. Always trying to use that as an anchor and as, a sail, I guess. So something that grounds me, but also pushes me forward, in business and in work and play. And I think that's the real goal, right? Is to find that alignment that creates some momentum for us in a way that's rewarding, fulfilling as we keep pressing on towards whatever ends we're heading towards.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're also going for a sort of balance, or and maybe that's the wrong word for it, but at least some sort of congruence between life, work, and play, and all those things, that they all fit together in some sort of way that's mutually beneficial for all of them. Is that about right?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that the emotional imagery that I can kind of conjure up is that there's like some sort of a fluidity or momentum between them. I think, there's various ebbs and flows. They're not all at the same level all the time, but I think, like you said, there's a congruence where one serves the other and the other serves the other, and on down the line, definitely.
Sure. So tell me, I had mentioned that before we started this interview that one of the topics I want to talk to you about was the idea of courage, and specifically courage in writing. And so you as a writer have a lot of experience in this. And then, of course, we talked about your story, what led up to it, and some of the courageous decisions you've made up to this point. So what does courage in writing mean to you? And is this a topic that you touch on with your Literati Writers, with the people that you coach?
Yeah, Tom, absolutely. I think courage is everything in writing, because writing is is one medium. It's one method of communication, of course. We all know it. It has very practical uses. It has very romantic, artistic uses and purposes as well. But courage in writing is fundamental, because I think that the caliber and quality of our writing, it takes skill building, it takes practice, it takes healthy habits, it takes all those things, just like a health regimen might, where we need to show up, we need to commit to it, we need to do it, and our skills will grow along with us. But what I have found is that, this is what I encourage my Literati Writers almost to a T, every single one of them, is that a depth of courage and confidence and self-awareness and self-belief are really paramount for all writers, creatives, artists, and hell, even entrepreneurs and people in business. There has to be this underlying fundamental self-belief, even through all the doubt and the fear and the uncertainty that we face as creatives and as entrepreneurs and just as human beings in this life. It's really, really fundamental, and I think that is one of the overriding themes that I continually touch upon in my writers group and in my writing on my blog and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, writing, the aspect of writing with courage and how do you do that, my latest mantra that kind of like came to me in a yoga class about a week ago is what it means to be courageous in your writing is to have the fearless presence to say the totality of what needs to be said. And by that I mean saying not everything that you could possibly say about a subject, but saying what needs to be said right now. And in order to do that, I think you really need to combine these elements of fearlessness, of not worrying about being judged, not worrying about being seen for your truth. It's funny, Tom, I think a lot of the time we fear failure, we fear being like criticized for something that we're wearing or how we look or whatever, those kind of remedial grade school fears that we have. But we're also afraid oftentimes of succeeding. We're afraid of taking on more responsibilities than we think we're capable of, or that we think that we deserve. So there needs to be this element of fearlessness there that says, I'm not going to worry about all the things on the periphery. I just need to worry about the presence of mind right now to say what I feel called to say, to trust myself, to deliver a message that might be meaningful to one person, that might read it somewhere around the world. Who knows? But that's actually, it actually reminds me of something that I just read from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which he describes genius as being this fundamental idea that a human being can trust that what they believe is deserving to be heard by someone else. And it's just that basic element of self-trust that he calls genius that is just, I think, the fundamental aspect of courage that we're all hoping to tap into as writers or creatives. And it's an ongoing practice. It's not like you just reach this level, you cross the finish line, Tom, and like suddenly you're a totally fearless, totally present writer or entrepreneur that's just, has nothing to worry about ever again. There's so many ups and downs, and as every project kind of comes to a head, you're always wondering, like, what the hell am I doing this to myself for? But it's all a part of the process, and I think that fearless presence to say what needs to be said is the key to courageous writing in the end.
Sure, and I think that's a pretty fascinating definition or idea surrounding that topic of courage in writing is fearlessness and saying what needs to be said. So I'm curious, and you kind of answered this already, but maybe elaborate on a little bit more for me. Do you believe that this courage is something that we can cultivate? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I think that it's absolutely something that we can cultivate. And great question on how we do it. I think the first level, the first step, the fundamental base level of how to cultivate it, I think is to just get acclimated to it. I think you need to really practice it kind of often. I recommend to my writers that there's this early stage of being a writer. I call it the emerging stage, or being an emerging writer. And to me, the emerging stage is that first stage where you're actually grasping and kind of battling with this idea that you're a writer at all. And you can replace writer for entrepreneur, you can replace writer for anything, really. It's that first stage where you're really trying to you're kind of like battling yourself for self-belief. And you really need to prove it to yourself by showing up often, regimenting the process of sitting down and writing. For me, I mentioned when I was depressed, I kind of reformulated my whole personal philosophy through writing, and that was how I was starting to emerge and see myself on paper. No longer was my head, my heart, my beliefs and my ideas all this nebulous, crazy space between my invisible space between my ears. It was something that I could put on paper and actually see and understand, and it felt really tangible and real. And that's how I cultivated my own self-belief. I think that's where it begins. And some of the other things that I recommend to people, and as I've kind of institutionalized these ideas in my own writing community, is I believe in surrounding yourself with people who share the same headspace as you. Not necessarily that they are all like-minded in demographic terms. You can surround yourself with very diverse people, but who all share values that you share, the beliefs that you share about what matters in life and what matters and how to experience it in life. I think finding peers who are looking for the same things as you is how you find more understanding. In a writer's group like mine, or just having a conversation like I'm having with you, Tom, when we can just kind of open up to our ideas and bad ideas back and forth, I think we really find a lot of understanding, like self-awareness, and we can also kind of reflect that understanding back to somebody else through the course of a conversation. So that's really important too. And then I think you need to find some role models, some mentors, some people who are maybe a little bit ahead of you in a few years ahead of you or a few months ahead of you, where they've tried some different things. They were mentored themselves by people who've been there, whether it's, you want to be an author, you want to start your own business, you want to quit your job. It's really helpful to kind of get out of our own heads and just have an open conversation or some sort of an experience with people that helps us feel grounded and like we're not crazy and and like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes it's really helpful to have somebody else show that to us. So I think that those three kind of core elements are really helpful in cultivating courage for any major leap or big decision that you're making, or if it's something like being more courageous in your writing. You got to show up, surround yourself with the right people who are there to support you, and ideally find some people that have been in your shoes before and survived it, so that they can kind of give you some ideas and advice and stories, so that you know that there is a path that you're walking. And even if you can't see where it all leads, all you need to know is that you're standing upon it right now. You got to take one step at a time, just like the rest of us, and slowly but surely you'll get there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So to summarize, it sounds like the three major tenets of cultivating courage in writing, or really courage in anything, because I feel like these are pretty practical and just general enough where they apply across the board for cultivating courage in anything, is daily practice, actually showing up to do the work. 2 is surrounding yourself with like-valued people as opposed to like-minded per se. The difference being you share the same values, which obviously I think is extremely important, because they'll promote your work, they'll support you when you're going through those difficult times. And then finally is finding mentors or role models or anyone that's kind of ahead of you that you can look to for guidance and also aspire to be like, I think, in a lot of ways. Would you say that summarizes it about right, of the three major, I guess, tenets of cultivating courage?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great part of that, Tom, is that you can really kind of shape those to suit your own needs. I'm not really a huge how-to type of a guy, because I really believe in giving people the freedom and the space to kind of find their own hows. But those 3 tenets, I think, really kind of encapsulate what it means to start stepping into a place of truth and to stepping into your own core identity. Like you said, those like-valued men and women who you want to be a part of and share experiences with. I think that stepping into those tenets is what's really going to get you where you need to go, and you'll figure out the hows along the way.
Absolutely, Dave. I really like that. I think that's really powerful stuff. And again, it's really cross-applicable to, I think courage in anything, in doing and taking on any endeavor. I think it's the same way. You mentioned entrepreneurship, but really anything we need courage in. I think it takes those 3 same, basic tenets to apply and cultivate that courage. So I think that's really great stuff. Well, Dave, I know you're a little rushed for time, so I don't want to keep you too long. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with my audience, maybe for aspiring writers or just anybody looking to do something courageous in their own lives? Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Absolutely, Tom. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for hosting me. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. And thank you for listening on the other end. And I want to make myself available to you if you have any questions or want to follow up with me. I'm really easy to track down. You can email me, dave@daveursillo.com. But a final thought is, I really believe, and this touches upon those tenets we talked about, Tom, I really believe that we generally, just as human beings, beyond writers or artists and entrepreneurs, we sometimes are our own worst enemies. We're our best line of defense, but we're also our worst enemies at times. And I really think that the more that we step outside of our own heads, the more that we can surround ourselves with people, whether that is through travel, whether it's in your own backyard, your own small town cafes, a yoga class, different online groups, whatever it is that kind of just gives you a little bit of room to get outside of your own head and around more people. That's really a place where you're starting to cultivate something extraordinarily meaningful. And I would encourage you to try to do that every day if possible. If you can have one conversation with a friend, maybe someone you haven't talked to in a long time, you just call them on the phone randomly, send an email to somebody, whatever it is. If you can have a conversation that has some sort of an overriding it doesn't even need to have an overriding purpose, but if you speak with purpose and with the intention to serve someone or explore an issue, I just really feel like we do ourselves a world of good. And it really, even if it's not writing, you can kind of just like write out loud and really get to the core of what matters to you in that moment. And I think that's the best that we can do every day for ourselves and for people around us too.
Awesome stuff, Dave. I really appreciate it. I think it's some great advice and great input and words to live by. Finally, I just want to make sure that people can reach out and connect with you, and I'll make sure I'll have it in the show notes. But where do you prefer people to get in contact with you if they were to find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can check me out at daveursillo.com. It's my personal blog, and or you can check me out at literatywriters.com, which is my online writing community. I'm on Twitter at Dave Ursillo, and I mentioned my email address, dave@daveursillo.com. Whatever medium floats your boat, whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you want to connect with me, I'm here for you, and I love having conversations like this. So I'm happy to chat with you as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show, Dave. And that wraps up In the Trenches Broadcast 20. If you're interested in checking out the show notes, just go to tomworkus.com/broadcast20, and that's the number 20. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. If you did, share it with somebody who might also enjoy it, and spread the word. Thank you so much for your support. As always, this is Tom Workus. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkis.com. Never fight alone. Join the resistance.